just take a collective breath here. Just taking a moment to tune in. And we are live. Welcome to The Wave, ladies and gentlemen. The Wave has touched down and we're ready to go. They've been preparing for this. Me and my man Garboushian here, who's co-producer and co-host for the show. My name is Chris Dubb. I'm a Kundalini yoga teacher and I teach self-awareness practices for a living. I'm also a community builder, and I'm so hyped to bring you The Wave, Evolving Human Consciousness talk show. We're really going to be jumping onto the cutting edge of consciousness here by opening ourselves up to explore topics that bring vulnerability and also bring a lot of insight. So we're going to be touching on areas that have brought transformation to our lives, from the pain, the healing, to the insight, to the wisdom, to the love, to the joy, and all that's involved in really living in life and really being honest about our experience in life. So The Wave is touching down with the first show on psychedelic medicine and the healing power of psychedelic medicine. We'll also be talking about decriminalizing psychedelic medicine in Canada. And we got some really exciting news for you because we got Trevor Millar as our guest today. And he actually has the petition that will be seen by the House of Commons once it's done with. I think it's in August. And that's really exciting because this is the first time this has been done. A petition like this will be seen by the House of Commons to decriminalize psychedelic medicine in Canada. So I'm really grateful for that. We'll let Trevor introduce himself in a moment, but we also got Daniel Greig, who actually just finished writing a book with one of his professors at U of T on consciousness. And he's really brought a lot of different topics relating to psychedelic medicine to the mainstream and really shares and educates people on the power of really learning about ourselves as consciousness and what that journey is all about. And like I mentioned before, we have our special guest host and co-producer, Avo, here. So Avo, I would love for you to just let the audience know just a little bit about you.
Well, I've been exploring consciousness and energy healing for a long time now, since I'd say 2009, and since I started getting deep into meditation, and then it just evolved throughout my life, and in my career, and also just the healing path we're all on during our journey of life. And I've currently become a Reiki practitioner, and also working on writing a book on the healing power of consciousness, using also different modalities and self-awareness practices. And also, aside from that, just have delved deep into the world of psychedelics as well myself for the past 3.5 years. So it's been a wonderful journey to learn about our connection to the universe within us and also around us. And that's why we're here. I just want to actually present the pureness, the beautiful qualities of psychedelic medicine to the world through this podcast and through just our sharing of our experiences and love.
I feel it in my heart, baby. This is good. This is good. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for all your help to get this out, and it's been such a pleasure.
Yeah, same here.
Awesome. Let's head over to Trevor Millar, and yeah, please share a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hello, I'm Trevor Millar. I am the chair of the board for MAPS Canada. MAPS is the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, and there is a Canadian branch to that. It was started in 1986 by Rick Doblin in the US, and MAPS has really done, maybe arguably more than anybody else to really legitimize the field of psychedelic therapy and psychedelic psychotherapy. So they've got a phase 3 FDA-approved clinical trial underway right now to use MDMA, the active ingredient in the street drug ecstasy, for treating post-traumatic stress disorder. So it was given breakthrough therapy status by the FDA because it worked so well in the phase 2 clinical trial. So they're really fast tracking it as a medicine. It should be a prescription within 3 to 5 years. And I came to this work through my company, Liberty Root, which I started out of a desire to try and help the downtown east side of Vancouver back in 2001. And in 2009, a plant medicine called ibogaine came on the radar to potentially help that downtown east side situation. And I started a company a couple years after that with a business partner. And we started Liberty Root, where we provided the plant medicine ibogaine to about 200 people, mostly for opioid use disorder. It's very good at treating opioid addiction. And yeah, that led to me being invited to be chair of the board for MAPS Canada. We've just recently started the Canadian Psychedelic Association as well, which is brand new, but we're getting it underway to try and represent these very cool medicines in a very respectful and ethical way. It's an interesting topic for sure, and there's a lot of intricacies to working well with these medicines, and we want to kind of humbly do all we can to steer that in a good direction in any way that we can.
Gorgeous, so good. And yeah, it's still a taboo subject, and still a lot of people haven't tried it and just don't even talk about it. They don't even go into that territory to even have the opportunity to understand the potential and what it's all about. So I'm super grateful that you're here because of the scientific research that you guys do in this area. You know, anyone who's used psychedelic medicine for a while, especially in ceremony, doesn't need the scientific research to necessarily to know, you know, but it's so important because we need to learn how to use this, like you said, in an ethical and a safe way. And because this is not decriminalized yet, because it's still illegal, because doctors could potentially, they would lose their license if they prescribed somebody this, the conversations aren't happening. So that's especially what these next 2 episodes here on The Wave are all about. So thank you for being here, Trevor. All right, Daniel, tell us about yourself.
Hi, so I appreciate your enthusiasm about my progress in this book, but unfortunately I'm not quite done yet. I'm still working on it slowly, diligently. But yeah, very exciting. That has been taking up most of my time right now. When I'm not writing, I'm also an organizer in the psychedelic community. I also put on lectures, educational events, trying to get the word out about research in the field of psychedelics, especially, but I also touch on philosophy and cognitive science in general as well on occasion. So the thing that I've done that's the most impactful so far is the Mapping the Mind conference. So this is an annual conference that happens every year in Toronto. Through my participation with the Canadian Students for Sensible Drug Policy, I started that conference up, I think about 5 years ago. And it's really taken on a wonderful and beautiful life of its own, which makes me very happy. It raises much needed research, which goes to MAPS Canada, and Trevor has also had the opportunity to speak there as well. So that's how we first met. Yeah, right now, I just finished my undergrad, so I'm sort of in a bit of a between phase, sort of wrapping up some projects that I have on the go. So I think that's a good introduction for me now, and then we can sort of dig into a bit of the specifics about what I like to think about as we go.
So good. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the work you've done, and I went to check out a few of the conferences you held at U of T, which already for me was like, wow, this is really cool that, you know, like the school is open to this exploration. I know it wasn't like sponsored by them or anything, but still just the fact that it was at U of T was really neat. And to see that there's like real discussions that are happening where there's the real potential for change and this to be integrated into our society.
You know, U of T is actually great as far as working with the Canadian Students for Sensible Drug Policy goes, because a lot of their mandates have to do with like harm reduction measures, appealing to schools, trying to get them to implement policies that are more harm reduction oriented. But all of that work was like already done. You know, when I first started, I like emailed all the people in charge and I was like, okay, how do you guys treat drug use on campus? Like if somebody's having an issue, what do you do? They're like, yeah, you know, we just take a mental health approach. We give them the appropriate resources, all of that. So I was really able to just jump right into the advocacy that I really have a direct personal interest in, namely the stuff about psychedelics. I went to U of T basically to study psychedelics. So it was really nice to have a group that I could work with there and just really jump into spreading the word in an environment that had very minimal barriers to making that happen.
Yeah. Very inspiring. Like, honestly, it's very inspiring because I don't know, like 10 years ago, it just didn't even seem like possible to me. And now it's like, wow, like having you guys on, seeing what Trevor's doing here, the path that Avo's been on, and just how many people are inspired to really move forward in this direction without looking for anything in return, which to me shows when it's really out of that love, it's like, there's a reason, you know, there's a reason why we're moving forward, and it's beyond just creating another business or another patent, you know, or another modality. This is something that has an entire life of its own. These, you know, these psychedelic medicines, which is really incredible, and intelligence that we're still learning to understand.
I mean, it's important to note that we can't have too much faith in the intelligence of the plants on its own, right? Depending on who forms relationships with them, it can become a vastly different entity. So we have a lot of responsibility on forming the appropriate relationship with these things.
100%. Glad you mentioned that, because that's what the second episode is all about, and we can totally dive into that more, the relationship with psychedelic medicine. Beautiful.
Excellent. Nice. I'm glad you're already covering that.
All right. So guys, I'm gonna ask you to get deep quite quickly here. This is only an hour show. I'm gonna leave room for maybe to go over about 10 minutes, because I know this is gonna be quite exciting conversation. But first and foremost, we can just go whoever unmutes themselves first here or kind of puts up their hand. But I would love to hear how psychedelic medicine has impacted your life, and why you're doing what you're doing now.
Well, it's impacted my life I think in the way that it's impacted so many of the lives around me. Like, I've given this medicine ibogaine to about 200 people or more now. And for something as debilitating as heroin addiction, it's pretty profound when people have struggled, you know, often 5, 10, 20 years before they get to my front door and have really tried to overcome their opioid use disorder, and nothing's really worked. And then all of a sudden you can give them this very powerful medicine with very unique qualities. Ibogaine has a 36-hour long trip generally, so very powerful, long psychedelic journey. But they come out the other end and they're not craving heroin anymore. And oftentimes, you know, they've been given psychological insights that heal their traumas and help them forgive themselves in different ways. So personally, I've had, you know, deeply profound transformational experiences with these medicines as well. The first time I smoked DMT, as an example, was, you know, it was a real kind of red pill, blue pill moment from the Matrix. Things were never really the same ever again after smoking DMT. And I think that's good. Like, people say, oh, if you do drugs like that, you're going to change forever. And that's kind of the point.
Yes.
So I've seen these changes that do happen forever in people, and it's incredibly rewarding to, at Christmas time, get texts from, you know, the wives or the fathers or the kids and say, it's been so good since we got mom or dad back. And, you know, they thank me for it, although I always say it's the client who did all the work. They're the ones that had to put them through that tough journey in order to make it all happen. But it's well worth it. And it makes me sad in a lot of ways that these medicines aren't more readily available, because there is such a desperate need for this kind of transformative healing that these medicines can and do provide really, really well.
Yeah, 100%. That's beautiful. It's I found psychedelics when I was about 23. I tried mushrooms a couple times when I was younger, but both times it was kind of like, I just don't think my consciousness was ready for it. I like look at a clock and all the numbers are changing. I turn on the TV, like 9 screens come up, and then all of a sudden I would feel like I was like being sucked into like a vortex in a black hole. And I don't think I was ready to like lose that identity of self that I had at that time. But when I was sick and tried this when I was 23, it's like literally when I was on these mushrooms, all my symptoms went away and I started to become aware of my thoughts. I became aware of my conscience, like what could really detect like being true when I was like being honest with myself and when I wasn't. And then all these repressed emotions and they all start to come up. And it was like so beautiful that all of a sudden there's like this awareness of what was causing my pain and suffering. And not that it ended it, but it showed me the light. It showed me, wow, it's like you can live beyond this. This is how. And if you really learn how to listen carefully, the same way that you listen to us is how you listen to your body. The same way you listen to like your subtle feelings and deeper into your heart is the same way you listen to us. You know, we speak to you from that place and we're like asking you to come in. That was like my like first experiences with it. So I'm just all about it because my mom's been on pharmaceuticals basically since I was a child, like to treat depression and OCD. And I've just seen how, I love my mom with all my heart, and she's actually doing better than she ever has her whole life, but she's still on the pharmaceuticals. And it's, to me, I really see that it's keeping her from really being confident enough to experience her emotions and her belief systems. So, and I see if she could just trust a little bit more to kind of wean down on them, then there would be potential that she could have huge growth. And then even just like a microdose of mushrooms or something like that. So that's another one of my reasons why I'm doing this, is because it's like, it's an opportunity to speak to my mom and to speak to others who might not really understand what this is all about, and understand it's actually, if done in like the right doses in the right settings, it's, to me, it's safer than most pharmaceutical medicine. There's a lot of side effects on those things. Okay, so yeah, thank you, Trevor, for sharing. You got me deep there. Why don't we head either to Daniel or Abo, whoever's feeling it.
I was thinking about chiming in about what you said about this pharmaceutical, because like what has inspired me on my path is aside from like peeling the layers of my own psyche and going inside myself with meditation at first. And I discovered DMT same time I discovered Vipassana back in 2009. But just, like everybody gets called to this kind of medicine at some point. Maybe some people never. But I mean, I didn't really get the call until like much later. I think it was like 2014, 2015. But I still didn't do it. I was kind of hesitant because it just, for me, I'm just like anybody else. Like there's always this hesitancy because of the fear of like discovering what else is inside your own mind, inside your own body, like your mind-body connection as well. But when I saw how people around me are suffering from different afflictions, like just how Trevor treats people with Iboga, I was very intrigued by the plant medicine, by the psychedelic mushroom, by the ayahuasca, which is a plant-based from Amazon. So then, I mean, meditation got me a long way in terms of bringing that balance in with myself and being calmer, more patient, loving myself, that deep connection with everything and everyone around you, understanding what true connection to God is, and what that true, what our true purpose is just to share and love and connect with each other, and not in an egoic way. But when I dived into doing ayahuasca, I mean, for me, it was a profound experience because that connection with my soul, that disconnect between the heart and the soul, was removed, and a lot of the truths about ourselves comes up so fast. It's like somebody mentioned this a long time ago. It's like basically doing like this big atomic bomb in your mind of information about yourself, and it's just coming at you so fast. But even though on our cognitive level, we can't, I say, grasp everything, or we can't even remember everything, on a deeper spiritual level, energetically, we get it. We get our pure connection to source, to the universe. And when I came out of it, to see not just myself, I mean, for me, it was a profound experience in terms of like healing my heart, and also trusting my heart again. But when I saw people around me who had lupus, diabetes, drug addictions, I mean, all kinds of different things, MS, it just, these people had like so many different types of afflictions that came to these ceremonies. And when they came out of it, they're like a brand new person. And for me, it's like, that was the key moment where I realized the world has to know about this. The world has to know about, and the thing is, it's not unsafe. It's unsafe for a fraction of the people around the world because of their mental cognitive disability, either bipolar disorder or some other like schizophrenics or whatever. But it was such a deep connection as I progressed further, that like with doing DMT, for example, and Bufo, which is the 5-MeO DMT, those just had a profound shift in me in regards to how much love there is in this world, and the unconditional love. You know what I mean? Like right now, I remember when I came back from Colombia from doing yahe. It's a different type of ayahuasca, and when people are asking me how do you feel, I said I love everybody. I just can't explain it. I just love everybody. I love myself. I love, and I just can't see any harm. Like I can't do any harm to anybody, and that for me is a profound shift as well. I mean, since my first experience with ayahuasca until now, with all the different types of psychedelics from DMT, LSD, and psilocybin, that's what drives me to help people with it. That's why I study psychedelics. I study myself better so I can understand the world better, because in order for you to understand the world, you have to study yourself too. And that's why I love the initiatives what MAPS is doing, especially with Trevor. It's just that research needs to be expanded, and this petition that he's putting through to have it addressed in the House of Commons is necessary. So please, everybody who's viewing this right now, I mean, after this episode's over, please sign that petition.
Did you post it in the?
I did post it
on the
yes,
Facebook
I did
page there?
post it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you can sign if you're live now. If you want to just keep paying attention, make sure to get on there to sign after, because your
there's
vote.
more juicy stuff coming, right? So maybe after the episode.
your vote matters, though. your vote
definitely
really matters. And Avo, if you want to mention about the draw for next episode.
Oh yes, yeah. MAPS, we've affiliated with MAPS, and MAPS has given us 2 passes for the upcoming conference. It's a webinar conference for the next 14 weeks, and it's normally $308 for 14 weeks, or $22 per week. And there's a speaker, I think, Trevor, I think it's for a couple hours, right?
Yeah, I think Mark Hayden is the first one. I know they've got Duncan Trussell, Paul Stamets.
Duncan Trussell, eh? Oh, nice.
Yeah. Cool guess.
I actually have the list here. Mark Hayden's first, and Nani Shuniguran. She's from Mexico. Chris Killam, Dennis McKenna, Terrence McKenna's younger brother. Paul Stamets, then the following week, Rick Doblin, who started MAPS. So it's going to be an amazing conference. All the latest information about all the research into consciousness and healing with the drugs, well, with the natural drugs.
Yeah, it's an incredible opportunity to really dive into this more. So we'll be giving away 2 free tickets. Like Avo said, they're worth about $300 each, and it's
for the whole pass, for the whole season.
Yeah,
it's $300.
Yeah. So they're valued at $300, and we're giving away 2 of them. So we'll put the rules for that contest again in the Facebook page, so you can look to win one of those tickets. Yeah. And so Thank you, Avo.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more note. I mean, the beauty of this as well, those who actually explore consciousness and healing as well, once they have more experience with this, especially with psilocybin, because it's more readily available than ayahuasca, I'd say, like, you know, when you have a group of people who you can trust and you can hold space with, and you know, it's amazing for talk therapy. Even with MDMA, same thing. It's just like you end up, you know, talking out your stuff, you know, whatever's coming up, you know, as you go deeper, especially when you have somebody, you know, who can hold that space with you, you know. So I mean, I know you and I have had that experience as well, where we've held space for each other and we've had that deep discussions as well as stuff comes up, and it doesn't. I mean, the value in there is, I mean, beyond measure, beyond measure. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It really is. It's really amazing how aware of your emotions you become, how aware, how you actually honestly truly feel. And that's the beauty of anything that enhances consciousness and enhances self-awareness, is that you become aware of how you honestly truly feel about your experience. And when you've tuned into that enough, you can't deny it anymore, you know. And that's
Truth serum.
we live a lot of our life in self-denial, because if we think that we showed these certain areas of our struggle and our pain, these areas that we're still having a hard time accepting with ourselves, we're afraid if we show these areas, we won't be loved. But when we come to realize that this is the truth of our experience, and with being honest is really the only way to build trust and connection in relationships, for at least long-term relationships, you know, then you do it, and then you end up being honest, and it feels good, and it feels nice to be open and vulnerable, and then you do it more, and more people are doing it around you, and it's inspiring, because it's like, yeah, man, and then you get stronger. So it's like, yeah, it's really, really amazing.
Well, that's why, I mean, like, even like we're on here right now, and like, I mean, I this is a short show, but I mean, I think all of us can go on forever in regards to how much, you know, we've gone through in terms of using the psychedelic medicine, and show our vulnerabilities. And it's just like for me, like, you know, like going that deep, and it's like a weight that was lifted off my shoulder in many respects. It just makes you feel a lot lighter. I mean, it's it just makes you just, you know, exactly what I just did, you know, just that breathing out, that
take that time to relax.
Yeah.
All right, let's head over to Daniel here, though. I just want to keep things flowing, want to get everyone's experience. So yeah, Daniel, if you could share us the impact of psychedelics for you, and why you're doing what you're doing now today.
Mm-hmm. So I first formed my relationship with psychedelics when I was about 19 years old. I didn't really know exactly what I was looking for at the time. I was in for a bit of a shock. I was convinced at the time I was going to be a science fiction writer, and deeply inspired by a lot of authors who either had very problematic drug use behaviors or like to talk about the possibilities of psychedelic-like substances in their works. So my motivation at first was very much just, oh, you know, let me see what consciousness can do. What is out there? Perhaps like in Frank Herbert's Dune, I could evolve my consciousness and see through time. And wouldn't that be great? Now, I did end up having a few visions of what it was for connection and love and God to be an active part of the universe. And the feeling states that came along with those were very surprising for me. At that time, I still wasn't really aware of how deep the mental health issues that I was going to have to grapple with for the next few years actually were. The states that I was put in, even just very minimal, mundane emotional states, were very unfamiliar with me. In high school, I spent almost the entire time locked into a dissociative state, either feeling absolutely nothing at all, or feeling deep, abysmal, nihilistic awfulness. So it wasn't really a good time. But psychedelics helped me to change that. Psychedelics opened up this space in my nervous system that I had shut off for myself for a very long time, and for good reason. So for that, I am deeply indebted to the medicines, as we call them. Within a few of my experiences when I was 19, I had a moment that I think that a lot of people have, which is, wow, you know, everybody needs to have this. It shouldn't just be me accidentally stumbling on these kinds of experiences because I got some research chemicals from a guy who likes to read New Age literature and make the stuff in his bathtub. You know, that's maybe not like the best. We should probably have better routes of access for these kinds of healing experiences.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, so, you know, I was taking an English degree at the time, but happenstance meant that I couldn't continue that. So I had a bit of time to reflect. I found the U of T program for cognitive science, and that really deeply stood out to me. It really brought a lot of the interests that I had had from my prior phase of wanting to be a writer of a particular kind into a very practical and applied light. So that's what I really liked about it. I could really grasp and grapple with the questions about consciousness and cosmology that I had always been so interested in, while also hopefully getting my hands in this psychedelic movement and helping to make it happen, helping it to flow through me as well. So yeah, that's a bit of context. We can talk a bit more deeply if we need to.
Yeah, I'd love to ask one question about that. I'm wondering, like, what about your psychedelic experience really brought on this breakthrough? You're kind of mentioning you were just kind of more oscillating between two states. Like, was there some catalyst moments or experiences that you could describe?
Yeah. So the first experience that really, I would say, helped to reintegrate my very fragmented psyche was this, you know, set and setting is always reinforced in psychedelic communities. The setting was very interesting. I was like out in like a gravel, what was it? It was just like a construction zone behind a railway track. Not the most insightful or beautiful environment, but it had a clear open sky. It was very open, so you could see the full expanse of the horizon. And I was lying there, and this was a sort of non-traditional psychedelic that I was using. There's a series of phenethylamines, and the one that I had my hands on was 2cc. So I would say I'm deeply indebted to that particular compound for opening up these sort of imagination, these domains of my imagination and emotion. And so this particular experience, I was lying back looking up at the sky, and as happens, my vision was moving. I was getting sort of this circular spiral pattern, and I could feel my awareness sort of scope outwards and outwards and outwards. And I was suddenly not just there with my friend looking up at the sky, I also had this internal comprehension of the cosmic expanse. And that spiraling motion coming in towards me at its center helped me to see that, well, it helped me to see very literally what it was for things to be moving together, to be moving in a unity, for there to be a flow in which many things participated. At the time, I felt very fragmented, disconnected. You know, dissociation is not just an experience I had with my body, but with my environment, with my community. I felt very alone, very lonely, very cut off. And so this insight into a unified momentum in which I was a part. It was just absolutely mind-blowing. I could feel it as well. And
Looks like we might have lost Daniel with, I think he's maybe having some internet issues. Avo, if you could just check on him, if you could maybe send him a message. Can you guys hear me? Trevor, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful.
I'll riff off what he was saying in the meantime.
Yeah, please.
I love that. So often, I did a presentation a couple of years ago now at the Psychedelic Psychotherapy Forum in Victoria. The first year I spoke at it, I spoke with Dr. Gabor Mate, and we did a presentation on ibogaine. And then there he is again. Yeah, cool. But the next year I did a presentation on psychedelic entrepreneurship. And the thing that I said psychedelic entrepreneurship is psychedelic, of course, means mind or soul manifesting. Entrepreneurship means to undertake something. So my theory is psychedelic entrepreneurship is manifesting your soul into a business or undertaking. And so what does that look like? Well, it looks like taking some of the lessons that these medicines give us, like the unity experience that Daniel was describing, and making sure as you're rolling out your business, you don't forget those very important points, like we are all one. And if you hurt somebody else, you are hurting yourself, whether you experience that pain right away or later down the road, it's going to come. Karma's either a beauty or a bitch, but it's definitely a thing. So I'll pass it back to you, Daniel. I was ripping off your unity experience.
Yeah, I don't know how far I got before I was cut off, but
the spiral galaxy, and you were one with it, and it was awesome.
Oh yeah, that was really nice. So anyways, after I had that, I had a very intellectual understanding, and then I like sat up, and then that launched this intellectual understanding into my heart, which was, you know, very important, because I was like, oh wow, like things can happen there. I can also feel unified, not just from this removed intellectual standpoint, but like here, now, in this particular world. So that was the last point that I wanted to mention there. And I like this idea about the psychedelic entrepreneurship. Something that I've really been trying to emphasize in the writing that I'm doing and in the speaking that I've been doing is the necessity of ecological thinking. Like, you literally can't not do that, because the mind is continuous with the environment, right? They emerge, they co-evolve. And so yeah, that thing that you're describing where, you know, you're going to hurt some aspect of oneself down the road, inevitably, you know, it might happen like 10 generations down, but insofar as we are continuous with the ever unfolding evolutionary process, and that is also continuous with the environments in which we're situated, we have a responsibility to be thinking about all of those levels.
And this is such an incredible point, because this relates to a lot more of the bigger picture, and the way that you can't actually hoard the knowledge that you receive from these experiences, because like Trevor's saying, you're an entrepreneur and in a business, it's following the principles, it's following the integrity, it's following the ways of respect that you learn, because, you know, no human is different in you in the way that like you experience pain if, you know, like you steal from somebody or something like that. You know, it doesn't matter how transcendent of a state you reach, you will still have that experience. You know, it might not affect you as much when you are in a place where you understand that there's like a deeper thing and this person's going to experience their karma. It's not related to you, it's not your responsibility, that kind of thing. But that it's still part of the experience. So to me, it's like, as you're growing and say growing your business or just going into the next creative endeavor that you have, it's a continual process of, yeah, considering your environment, considering the other humans around, considering the impact of the decisions that you're making. So it's like, yeah, you can have this amazing vision, this amazing idea, but then if you go back to your old way of doing things, or it's that kind of maybe being a little more competitive or like cutting corners, or, you know, maybe being like nervous to really consider so many different energies, so you only consider like yourself more, it's like that will only ever create something that can contain a reality that you've considered. So the more that we consider our environment, the more that we consider consciousness as a whole, then we're creating a playground for everybody. You know, our creations are for the collective consciousness. They're not for our own self-gain and our own agenda. And to come into the next question, I'm really getting this vibe now, because, you know, some people might be like tuning in, but maybe not fully feeling this experience. Like, you know, it seems like these guys are, you know, have had some really transformative experiences. These guys have dedicated their life to doing this type of work, but it still might not be fully landing. So I wanted to ask you all a question, and it's why do you believe that psychedelic medicine isn't more widely used and talked about? We can go into that too. But why is it not more widely used and talked about?
Sure, I'll take a stab. Well, you know, the war on drugs has been a very efficient propaganda campaign since the, my dogs are going to bark here in a sec. Since the, you know, the mid 60s, early 70s, anything that was deemed psychedelic was, you know, prohibited. So LSD, of course, psilocybin mushrooms, even ibogaine in the States in around 1971. And these were scheduled as if they have no medical or therapeutic benefit, which is simply not true of a lot of the medicines that are on that Schedule 1. But it's, you know, there was this anti-war movement against the Vietnam War. A lot of people really wanted that Vietnam War to continue on. So when the kids in tie-dye started dropping LSD and saying that they weren't going to go to war for the machine anymore, that really, you know, pissed a lot of people off, and that really threatened where they were at. So, you know, and Ronald and Nancy Reagan started the war on drugs in the 80s, and just say no, and this is your brain on drugs. And I bought it, you know, I bought that hook, line, and sinker. That was my generation, the DARE generation. And drugs are bad, and the amount of guilt that I had the first time that I experimented was, it was very much present. And at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but these drugs aren't that bad. Kind of like the same way sex was sold to me. Sex was a bad thing. And then you have sex for the first time. I'm like, whoa, they've been trying to keep me from this. This is crazy. So yeah, I just think the war on drugs was a really effective campaign. And I think, thankfully, just the truth of how powerful these medicines are is lifting the veil. You can't deny the truth on these. There are so many issues that the world is facing today that these substances directly can fix in a very short amount of time. In a 6-hour session with psilocybin done right, you can lift a lot of depression and anxiety, as an example.
Thank you so much for sharing. And it's so true. And it's, to me, like, it was even just challenging to come out and do this talk show. A lot of different fears were coming up, and I still feel that was like some of this like subconscious programming around, you know, like, you're like, I'm not responsible to be doing this, or, you know, like, it could be dangerous. And I definitely don't believe that. The dangerous part is I've never had that experience. I've had the exact opposite. It's like, it's made me love myself more. Like, is that dangerous? Understanding my creative potential, is that dangerous, you know? And it took me on a journey to learn more about yoga and self-awareness, realizing that, you know, I can't use these psychedelics as a crutch, which pharmaceuticals you actually can. These stronger psychedelics, they're teachers. So if you're using it as a crutch, they're going to show you you're using it as a crutch. Like, that's the power of this kind of medicine. There's an intelligence to it. And like anything else, we're learning about our own consciousness. So you could even hide that. You could have a few experiences and not realize, but it will always come up to the surface because it works with you on the level of what you want to know. And if you want to know the truth and you want to be an honest human being, it's going to help you live that way. And I can say that from my own experience as a guarantee. Would anyone else like to add anything here?
Yeah, I was going to add where some of the research I did, I mean, you if you read about history as well, I mean, psychedelics have been around for like thousands and thousands of years. I mean, from either the Amazonians using ayahuasca to like the Vedics using, you know, psilocybin as well. I mean, there's this theory that yoga came from the Vedics because of the psilocybin experiences as well that they had. I mean, it's a form of actually creation, you know, that you're, I mean, not a form, but sorry, that the what they experience actually helped them create these other modalities to deal with, you know, the physical aspect, our physical world, to even in Egypt and Sumerians. And I mean, it goes like even like up in Siberia with the Siberian mushroom shamans as well. I mean, it's been used for so long to expand people's awareness and consciousness that once it was rediscovered back again in the 40s by Albert Hofmann, when he actually took a form of, I forget what it is. Maybe Trevor, you can chime in. What's the type of?
I think that would be mescaline. Mescaline was the first psychedelic isolated, and it was actually earlier than that. I think it might have been like right on the cusp of the 1900s.
Yeah, I mean, but it's based on it's a type of spore that infects wheat.
Ergot.
Ergot, yeah, ergot's LSD, but I think Hoffman, he was responsible for synthesizing mescaline.
But he also synthesized LSD later on from ergot.
Oh, you know what? Sorry, my bad. I'm thinking of Hafter. Hafter, Hoffman, these are very similar names.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, but the thing is, like, after that, the Sandoz, which was a Swiss company that he worked for, the pharmaceutical company, was like, okay, well, what are we going to do with this? So they were like giving away LSD to psychiatrists and psychologists, like, to do field research, and that's what actually expanded the movement, as they were healing people with huge success. And I mean, later on, when it was actually made illegal, a Schedule I drug in the U.S. and eventually around the world, Stan Grof actually was using LSD successfully with his patients. So he had to come up with another method. So I mean, again, like to Trevor's note, I mean, it just got to a certain point in time where, when those who were in power that want to maintain that structure don't want to, have this, like, free spirited, everybody acts upon love instead of ego. I mean, war is money, right? So there's this war on consciousness to avoid people from awakening themselves. And that's what essentially, led to the criminalization of it, because it was just like the fear aspect of, what if like 10% of the United States, 10% of the world woke up with these psychedelic medicines? What's going to happen? You're going to have this huge shift in people's, I guess, way of living and how they want to, perceive their existence, how they see their existence, and they want to change it. And that's the biggest problem. And I think also it's very true to our time now. But I mean, I'm glad that this is we're at this point where we have a renaissance again, that we're rediscovering the therapeutic benefits. So I mean either Chris or I are going to ask this question eventually, but I mean, it's just like regards to decriminalization, that topic. I mean, for Trevor later on to maybe he can fill us in. It's like, what kind of feedback is he getting from people within his field, like in either MAPS or your connections with maybe possibly government? You know what I mean? I mean, that's the next step, is actually, the word infiltrating is not the proper word, but I mean, at least to infuse ourselves into the environment of politics to actually bring this topic of awareness.
Yeah, and
like psychedelics.
And that's what's happening now. So that's beautiful. Okay, Daniel, it seem like you might have had something you wanted to add there?
Yeah. I just wanted to jump in from like maybe a slightly different perspective. You said, why aren't more people talking about this? But honestly, in the last 2-3 years, I have been so surprised at how many people are talking about this. Like, this isn't an underground countercultural phenomenon anymore. This is emerging directly into the mainstream. There was a segment on Dr. Oz, of all places, about psychedelics sometime last year. Gwyneth Paltrow had a show about it on Netflix, which was widely watched. And a friend of mine had started one of these mushroom retreats in Jamaica, and requests for that service just skyrocketed after that Gwyneth Paltrow show was displayed. So there is a hunger that people have for it. And I think that one of the things that helped is that even though the war on drugs really inhibited access to these particular substances, people were still doing the meditation, doing the yoga, doing these other consciousness altering practices. And so I think that people keeping up with that aspect of self-work and consciousness alteration really helped to prepare our culture for receiving psychedelics when they came again. Because now more people are using psychedelics than they were in the 60s. It's a more common phenomenon. both in people's attitudes being a little bit more, let's say, healthy towards these things, and also in people's use and in people being public about these things. So I would say that we're on a pretty good track. I'm not really very worried about how many people are or aren't talking about this right now. In fact, I think maybe too many people are talking about it too excitedly, if anything.
Right on. Well, I think that is part of the point, is that for a long time it wasn't happening. There is an uprising now. Obviously, cannabis is legal in Canada, and what got me is that there still isn't really much education that's happening on it, you know, and I see a lot of recreational use, and I think a lot of people really do consider it a medicine, but then there's a lot of people who don't necessarily have that kind of relationship, and maybe they want to build that, but that there could be more of like a dependent use on it. And if, like you're saying, if some more self-awareness practices were developed, or there was more intentional experiences with the cannabis, then that could potentially change. And as well for other psychedelic medicine, I feel with more education, we can start to create more breakthroughs, you know. This is going to kind of be for more next episode. We'll talk about like dosing, and we'll talk a little bit more about like intention setting, the environment that you're in. But yeah, I really like that you say that, because the topic is increasing a lot. I think there's a lot of people that also aren't aware of that aren't aware that this is becoming something that is creeping up into the collective consciousness, where it's like, whoa, this is something that now is becoming more norm. It's becoming more normalized. It's not this like, you know, societal taboo subject as much. And yeah,
I think it's important to mention that. That made me think that, you know, for those of you still hiding in the woodwork, you can come out now. It's okay.
That's good.
And one way you can do that is by sharing our petition.
Yes.
Yes.
So yeah, this petition came about. I was approached by a couple of guys here in Vancouver, Chris Bennett, who owns the Urban Shaman in downtown Vancouver, as well as his friend Jovi and Francie. And they had moved this petition forward. Canada has a pretty cool e-petition process. You can submit a petition. All you need is 500 signatures, and that petition will be read in the House of Commons. So we had a Green Party MP, Paul Manley, sponsor this petition, and we got 500 signatures within the first 12 hours. It was live on April 16th, and we've got until August 16th. And we really want to get as many signatures as possible. Our kind of pie in the sky goal is 500,000 signatures. So we've got about 5,000 signatures right now. So in order to, if we were going to get the number of signatures we would need a day in order to get to 500,000 would be about 5,000 signatures a day. So I don't expect 5,000 new signatures tomorrow, but exponential growth is a beautiful thing. So if those 5,000 people who have already signed the petition get 10 people to sign the petition, and then they get 10 people to sign the petition, we're at 500,000. So that doesn't sound too crazy. We're doing a big mainstream media campaign launch in a couple of weeks, and we've got some quotes from Gabor Mate as an example. So I'm sure the press release will get some traction. But if you know, if you're looking for a way to speak to your family about the fact that you think psychedelics are a healthy thing, presenting this petition is a really good way of doing that. And in fact, there's some cool Netflix documentaries now. One is called Have a Great Trip. It was a lot of fun. I've been so involved in kind of the medical aspect of these substances that it was good to watch that documentary and say, oh yeah, these are fun too. Like, I'm always taking them so seriously, but it was good to just put that fun spin on them. So put your parents in front of that documentary. It's got a lot of cool, famous people in it, and then get them to sign the petition afterwards, please. If you go to decriminalizenature.ca/petition, that's got a quick link straight to the petition that we're really, it would mean decriminalizing all plant medicines in Canada if it is successful. And we're going to do a lot of lobbying. We know we've got a lot of people inside government who are on our side. So we're really going to try and circle the wagons around getting some change implemented at the federal level here in Canada.
Mm.
How many
I
more
think
lobbyists are you looking at adding to your,
As many as we can. Like there's,
Yeah.
I know a senator that's behind this. I know a Liberal MP that's behind this. I know some people within Health Canada who support this. So I'm just going to get them all in a room together, or a Zoom room at least, and let them strategize for me.
Are you going to present, obviously, I mean, in order for this to be really effective is to come with a lot of like data from maps as well.
Yeah, we've got an amazing scientific one-pager we've put together. So yeah, when this mainstream media campaign launches, we're going to have, we figure we've captured the 5%. There's 5% of people who will just automatically sign this petition. If they've heard about it, they've signed it already. So now we're after the 95%, which is going to take a bit of an educational campaign. And we're built, that's getting built and will be launched pretty soon.
Could you speak to that 95% now, and maybe if you could share some research that is like quite definitive that
for
that
sure.
you guys
Well,
have done
let's look at MAPS phase 2 study. This is not a direct plant medicine, but it really reflects what happens with a lot of the plant medicines. So the phase 2 study to treat post-traumatic stress disorder using MDMA assisted psychotherapy. You needed to have complex, untreatable PTSD. You needed to have tried everything else in order to get into this study. And after the phase 2, more than 78%, or 78% was the number of people in that phase 2 study no longer qualify as having post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's remarkable. Like that's a really hard disorder to treat for people. So it really helps people kind of move into the traumatic place without being triggered, so that they can look at what the trauma is all about and then hopefully let it go, hopefully forgive it. I always say these medicines are forgiveness medicines. They help you press reset on your energetic system in places where it may be caught up. So psilocybin's doing the same thing. Psilocybin's in a phase 3 clinical trial with breakthrough therapy status again. Yeah, you can just start searching online. Johns Hopkins University has done a lot. They're like using psilocybin, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, to treat cigarette addiction, to elicit mystical experiences in people, which is a really cool avenue of discovery. Yeah, there's so much science coming out now.
Oh my God, it's so positive to hear this.
I was going to ask actually if you can quickly just describe, Trevor, the process of, like, how they use the MDMA in a clinical environment. Like I've heard about it. Like just a quick little.
Yeah, so it's basically you do some therapeutic sessions. So you get to know your therapist, you develop a level of trust with them, and start discussing your issues with them. And then you do MDMA assisted psychotherapy. It's non-directive therapy. So you take MDMA in a room on a psychiatrist's couch or a bed, put on a blindfold, put on headphones, and just let the medicine work through you. And if you do need to talk with the therapist, they'll be there to do that. But like I say, it is non-directive therapy. The therapist isn't trying to add too much in the moment. And they will do some therapy after that. And then they'll do 3 sessions within the course of about 3 months. So about 1 session a month, and then some follow-up therapy as well. So it's not just the MDMA, it's MDMA assisted psychotherapy.
I've heard of work they use that exact therapy for couples as well, who are like on the verge of divorce.
It's sad that there's been no research really in the last 50 years, because there's so many avenues we're going to be able to take with this. Like imagine some 3-MMC, which is another cool compound, or MDMA with in mediation for business. Like there's so many things that you could do to help people break down those barriers between them. Say, oh yeah, this is just a human being as well. This isn't my enemy. How about, rather than the 10-year, $100,000 $1 million divorce process, we just you know,
Can you
decide to
imagine a
get
room full of
along.
executives like just like taking this and laughing off?
I can.
That'd be
Yes.
beautiful. I'd love to see that.
Well, yeah, and that's like just to go back to the whole forgiveness point you're making, Trevor. It's like, you know, everyone talks about, oh, there's no emotion in business, and it's like that's not like, I know not everybody, but that's a common thing that's said if you want to really be successful and make a lot of money. And it's like at the end of the day, if you show your humanity and compassion in more decisions, you might in the short term not make as much money, but you can make just as much money. But even if you don't, you're feeling good about yourself, you know, like you're actually considering other people. And I feel like that's what brings in the forgiveness, you
Yes.
know, because when somebody hurts you, it's very hard to see beyond taking it personally, being like, oh, this person hurt me, like they're such a jerk, like they should have had more consideration, they should have known what I was going through, they should have known this or that. And it's like, okay, but we don't know their situation, we don't know what they were going through, we don't know what kind of pain they're carrying, we don't know these types of things. And as we explore our own wounds, we discover the kind of compassion that's necessary, and we learn fairly quickly once we do some of that deeper forgiveness work is that the people that have hurt us or are still potentially doing things that have felt hurtful, it's because they lack that kind of compassion that you're learning to meet those wounds. So when we see that they're lacking compassion, it's like, oh, I should be more compassionate to this person. They don't yet understand that that is what they're needing. And I'm realizing I didn't completely understand that that's what I needed. And now I'm being taught the type of touch that's needed to enter into a wound that might have been open for a while, that maybe I never thought could be healed, that could never be closed up, and I could feel whole and complete again. And especially in areas in your life that you may be like struggling with pain for a long time, it's like psychedelics allow the opportunity that it's not necessarily going to give you that quick fix right away, but it's going to show you there's a way. And to me, then it becomes your own responsibility to then notice the things you need to do to be able to get the support that you need, start to reach out, be more open and vulnerable, bring in the community. Because like we're going to go into in the second episode, we're going to talk really like we go to peyote and how that medicine is like native to North America. It's native to like I don't want to say founders of this land because we don't necessarily know, but before Christopher Columbus came along, this stuff was being spread all throughout. And actually peyote through the Native American church is legal right now, and that is legal to do through the church, which is really, really amazing. But yeah, that it's done in community, that people take that medicine together in a teepee and you share afterwards, and you learn how to like grow together. You learn how to share. You learn how to be like, oh, you know, Jack, I realized I was pissed because, you know, you weren't going to get water for the rest of the group, and, you know, you were just kind of like slacking or whatever. Like it could be those kind of small things, but we hold on to those things. We don't realize that we're kind of angry that maybe someone's not pulling their weight. Maybe we're ashamed at ourselves that we're not being able to step up in the ways that we'd like to. So yeah. I just kind of want to make these points because the medicine is just, it's just to simplify it in that way. It's just showing us how to be honest with our internal experience and to be more honest with our emotional experience consistently. And in that, we end up learning how to do that without the medicine, but the medicine is a teacher. The same way you go to university, you start to learn from that teacher, and then eventually you know how to do it. But at first you don't, you know, and they're teaching you how, and then eventually you move out of school, you don't have that teacher anymore, you're doing it on your own. It's exactly the same way that this plant medicine works.
I'd love to add something to your point there, Chris. I mean, that teacher aspect and having a community where they get together and they do the medicine together. I mean, with this initiative that Trevor is doing with MAPS, imagine, you know, decriminalization across Canada, and eventually, you know, people actually using this as a therapy for group therapy for their whole family, all getting together. I mean, you know, getting rid of the dysfunctional issues among family and getting into this medicine, whether it's MDMA or ayahuasca or psilocybin. I mean, I've seen firsthand experience of families in ceremony and leaving in this. I mean, they've done a lot of repair to the damage. or even people who had lost a family member and they had to go through the grieving process, and they've used the medicine for grieving.
Definitely helps with grieving. Yeah, for sure. Okay, Daniel, it seems like you've wanted to chime in a few times.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit more about this phenomenon you're talking about, where you're becoming more honest with what's within. You're coming to more clearly see what needs to be resolved. There's some good research that actually shows that psychedelics really do this in a very effective way. And there's, like, this particular factor is playing a very big role in the book that I'm writing currently, which is about enlightenment specifically, but it touches on a whole bunch of other subjects, right? And enlightenment, roughly understood, is just the ideal for human living according to the standards of whichever tradition you're looking at. Enlightenment is that which is most illuminated, most good. Now, one of the common things that you get in Christianity, Platonism, Buddhism, is this idea to be directly in touch with true being, to be able to clearly see that, and to be able to clearly see what matters and to act on what matters. So I'm putting a box around this and calling it the clear sight, this ability to openly, clearly see what matters and how to work with it. And there's a great study which very, in a concise way, shows how this phenomenon manifests and what it looks like. So in the Imperial College studies, where they're using psilocybin to treat people with treatment-resistant depression, they also had a number of cognitive assessments done on these people pre and post-treatment. And so there's this one experiment where it assesses your ability to recognize emotional expressions on computer-generated faces. And so what they'll do is they will gradually phase a positive face into a negative one, or vice versa. And then you just click a button when you can clearly tell that the facial expression changes emotions. And so people who are experiencing treatment-resistant depression are locked into these negative interpretive biases, which are reinforcing their depressed states, right? Because everything looks horrible to somebody who feels horrible, and then that just feeds back into itself. It becomes a self-organizing system.
Yeah, it feels like you can't get. It feels like that's what reality is, and that there's not a reality outside of that.
Yeah, very much. It just saturates, infuses your environment. So after these people had gone through these psilocybin experiences, though, their ability to identify the boundaries between facial expressions dramatically improved. They were performing around the same as people who didn't have treatment-resistant depression. So that's like amazing, right? It actually opens up your perceptual faculties to allow you to see the world and what it's actually like. And that is a truly profound ability, which we have some data to back up is something that psilocybin, ayahuasca, et cetera, can bring to us.
Wow.
I think another amazing study is the Johns Hopkins and NYU studies using psilocybin to treat end-of-life anxiety in terminal cancer patients. And the people with terminal cancer, they're going to pass away soon, not quite too sure when, but they're just riddled with anxiousness. And then you can give them 2 or 3 sessions, 1 session, and it totally lifts their fear of death, and they become supportive for their family members who are starting to go through the grieving process themselves. So I always think around these things, like, if ibogaine is so strong it can help people end heroin addiction, what can it do for you? And if psilocybin is so strong it could end a terminal cancer patient's fear of death, what can it do for you?
Yeah. Well, I kind of want to ask you guys now a bit of a challenging question here, because I'm sure some people are thinking, like, how is this possible? Like, how do they have this experience? How are they ingesting this medicine, and then this experience that happens, like the fear is lifted? Like, what is going on with them internally to have this type of experience? Now, I know it might not be easy to explain in words, which is why I said it's a challenging question, but I would love if either of you could take a stab at it.
Yeah, I can take a stab at it. It's actually not that hard to explain in words. So your brain learns how to do things, and then it, in order to conserve energy, keeps behaving in the same kind of way. You get these deeply ingrained patterns of sense making, and you carry those around with you for a long time. there are certain conditions and periods in your life where it's easier to learn because the neurochemical environment in which you learn is a little more conducive to that learning process. So you have high periods of plasticity when you're an infant, but then that slowly tapers off. Now, what it seems that psychedelics can do, especially the serotonergic ones, which act on the serotonin system, MDMA counts as one of these, although it also has some other action, LSD, DMT, psilocybin. And so what these substances do is they shut down, they sort of dissolve these learned patterns of sense making to allow your brain to explore new states of behavior, while also giving you a bit of the neurochemical flux, which helps your brain to learn a little bit better. So, for example, one of the studies that came out initially when psychedelic research was first getting back on track, that was really interesting to people, was the finding that in the brains of rats, neurotrophic growth factor was released in large amounts when you gave rats psilocybin. So they're like, wow, you know, especially in your hippocampus, it seems, this substance is helping you to form new connections, form new ways of relating to your memories. So in few words, it basically overrides your learned biases, enables your brain a more flexible state wherein it can explore novel interpretive spaces, and then allows you to also learn and integrate that novelty past the experience, which is what's actually really fascinating. There's an afterglow period, which might be able to be sustained by things like neurofeedback therapy. But that afterglow, that, you know, people often report this as feeling as though they have sort of a fresh outlook. They are looking at the world with child's eyes following a psilocybin or LSD experience. And you do have an enhanced ability to learn and to change in that period. And it's that follow-up period that is also especially important, which is why integration is so often mentioned. So you first have a moment of mass reorganization of your sense-making systems, and then you have a period of enhanced learning that follows that, in which you can bring those insights into the body through habit and behavior change.
The metaphor I will often use to describe this is, which is very similar to what Daniel just said, it's like as we're living, we see life through a filter. It's like we see life through a pane of glass. And as our heart gets broken, as crap happens to us, that glass gets dirty. And it gets so dirty that we don't even recognize that it's dirty anymore. And I feel like a good therapeutic psychedelic session or ceremonial session, it's not really like it adds anything to you. It just cleans that glass from the inside out. And then you're like, oh, actually, life is kind of awesome. And I see how I was seeing things in a negative way before, and I'm kind of free from that. And it gives you the opportunity to choose differently. And yeah, it's a wonderful process to behold.
Absolutely. It's really hard to like change when you are looking through that which needs to be changed, right? You got to sometimes take your glasses off to see that they need to be cleaned.
Yeah, and that's what I find is so amazing about the exploration of consciousness is, and what science sometimes discludes, because they talk so much about the objective experience, when the subjective experience has an impact on the objective experience, you know? So when we're more aware of and like seeing in real time, which psychedelics do, and also like deeper meditation work does as well, but psychedelics can really make it obvious. It's like, whoa, I'm believing this, and then it's like, say like I'm afraid to go try out for this, I don't know, sports team or something like that. And then I'm feeling the fear, and then I'm seeing all these like different ideas come up that are distractions. Oh, maybe I should go try this other sport, or you know, maybe I should just go eat some food right now, even though I'm not hungry. And like, and then realizing, oh, this is coming from that fear. And as I tune into like a place of me that's like understanding why I want to try out for that team, you know, maybe I have certain fitness goals. I want to enjoy doing something together in community. I just need to have some more fun and play in my life. We tune more into that. And then it's like, oh, okay, I want to go ahead and do that. And then, okay, the fear comes up again. So then we go and we look at it. It's like, well, what am I afraid of? You know, and we might go back to those other times we've put ourselves out there. We've joined a team before, and maybe nobody kind of reached out, and you were like younger, so you found yourself sitting on the bench alone, or something along those lines. Like, And then we notice that and be like, okay, you know, I've grown a lot since then. I have a lot more like self-confidence. And if somebody doesn't say hi to me, I can say hi to them. Or if someone doesn't say hi to me, or, you know, it's like, just as an example, like it's not as big of a deal anymore. But when we don't examine that, we don't realize we're living in that moment from that younger consciousness. And sometimes we don't even go ahead and do the thing that we actually really want to do, because these fears come up, and fear in itself is basically just unconsciousness. It's just, it's unawareness. And the more that we become conscious about anything, we see that we create our interpretation of reality, and most of our interpretations come from our past experiences or what other people have told us that we really trust.
I was going to add something to. Sorry.
I treated somebody that had obsessive compulsive disorder, and she just had this breakthrough moment where she's like, it's just fears. It's just all these fears. And like, surely she knew they were fears going into this experience, but all of a sudden something shifted, and all of a sudden her fears were, oh, these are ridiculous little fears. And it totally set her free. It was really beautiful to see. She's still doing fabulously.
That's amazing. Yeah,
I was going to add something to what Trevor mentioned about like that glass being cleared, being cleaned. And I mean, like I'm sure you guys can relate too, but I mean, one of the other aspects to me was like, well, you know, yeah, the glass is cleared, and now the mirror is in front of me. You know, I'm looking at myself as well. You know what I mean? Like in its true form. And the beauty of the DMT aspect, like the DMT and ayahuasca, or DMT alone, is that it actually, from what I've read, maybe Daniel and Trevor, you guys can chime in too, is that it does actually also reprogram the mind as well. It kind of rewires your neural connections, not necessarily to actually, eliminate that fear, but to actually deal with it in a different perspective, as opposed to actually, like the person you said, it's just fear. You just got that reprogramming. All of a sudden, it's just fear. And you realize what it is. And just one last point is like, with regards to this COVID-19, that so many people are indoors, and they're, a lot of people are in fear, or just feeling insecure about their jobs or what's going to come next. Is, imagine if this was available to everybody to use, aside from meditation, which works great, but to actually use this for like a short, this because everybody's going through this trauma collectively, right? To use something like psilocybin, just so you can actually reframe the situation and understand it better in terms of a a much higher level of awareness. So anyway, in terms of my point, I mean, for me, it felt like a complete, like just a cleansing, like a reawakening, so to speak, like a rewiring. What do you like, Trevor and Daniel, what do you guys have to say about that in regards to like the rewiring research that I've read with DMT, at least?
Yeah, I mean, that's very consonant with sort of what I was saying before. The way that I like to look at it, instead of reprogramming, we have a lot of computational metaphors in our culture, but at the end of the day, I think that relationships are the fundamental thing for organisms. And so, as I mentioned, there's this tendency for especially hippocampal neurons to grow in the context of psychedelic experiences. And what that's doing is that it seems that's helping to change one's relationships to the memories that they have, right? So this woman with OCD, it's not that the fear is gone, but it's just that she has a vastly different relationship with it. And that also correlates to different neural relationships, right? The way that your brain is connected, the way that it forms relationships within the ecology of those tiny organisms we call neurons, that is being fundamentally shifted. And in some ways, actually, it seems that your neural economy is being made a little bit more efficient as well, because you don't have to do all of these sort of weird interpretive leaps and bounds. There's some interesting things we could talk about relating to like pain perception, for example. pain is worse if you try to engage in top-down regulation, but if you just allow the pain to flow, then you'll have more activity on your somatosensory areas, but the experience of the pain won't be so bad. And so that's what we see people who are advanced meditators, that they can inhibit this top-down regulation mechanism where your brain is trying to establish a relationship to that experience, which it actually isn't effectively going to be able to carry out. And that transformation in these neural relationships and in the relation between the person having the experience and the experience, all of that is very fundamental in people's well-being. And so I think that's very much exactly what is happening when we have this sort of neural rewiring thing going on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Well, yeah, we're forming new relationships, and that new relationship changes our perception of reality, because I don't think there's anything more impactful than real connection. And when we have real connection, that's because areas have like synced up that felt like a part, that didn't feel part of the whole. So, you know, when fear comes up, a lot of the time we disassociate, or all of a sudden we react and we go to that next impulse and we move into that. When in reality, what happens when we just remain aware of the fear, see all of our different judgments and perceptions that come up, and okay, well, now I see that I'm normally about to do something. Now I'm getting really anxious. So this is when I smoke a cigarette, or you know, or go eat something, or like overeat or something like that. You know, so when we see this, well, then it gives us an opportunity to have a choice. Okay, well, I can go to this thing, or I could try this new experience, which is why I feel like it's so important to be in this educational forum here, because if we're starting to do like more psychedelics, well, we're going to be, even after the experience, we're going to be more aware of our fears. We're just simply going to be more aware of our internal experience. And if you know you're still having challenges with some of these things, then ask for support. If you've noticed that you've had this fear come up so many times, and you've noticed that you've gone to this addiction, or you've gone to this impulse so many times, this is an area you're having a challenge with, you know. And I've had so much of this that I'm learning now to just share with more and more people what is coming up, that when I check out, you know. And that's a vulnerable thing to do, but I want to be honest. I'm seeing that the more vulnerable I am, the more trust is built in relationships, and the more vulnerable people are with me. So then I get to be in that position of really giving as well. And that's basically kind of how life works. You know, we're never always going to be in that like position where we know everything. We're always the giver. We're always the leader. Like it doesn't flow that way, you know. And when we allow just like the Tao, like the flow of events to happen, we naturally come into the roles that we're good at and strong at. And if somebody is in a situation where they're seen as the better leader, we just let them lead. And then all of a sudden you might have a good idea. So then you come in and you start leading the situation. And, you know, we're building and growing together in this way. And I especially speak to guys in this way, because a lot of the time we don't want to come out of that that mindset like I know, you know, or I know what to do. We don't necessarily want to be in a place where we don't know, or, oh, okay, I'm confused. I'm not sure the next move. I don't know what I feel like. But if that's my honest experience, that's my honest experience, you know. And for me, I've experienced like more overwhelm in my adult life, especially as I take on things that more relate to my dreams, that bring up fears. I've experienced more of those things, experienced more of that overwhelm, but I'm also like, I'm more aware of it. So it doesn't overtake me. Before, when I wasn't aware of it, I was going through that process anyway and not realizing. I was just continuing on. So now if I'm with a group of people, I'm starting to feel that way, well, then I'll just mention it, or I'll go take time and go take a walk, because I got to honor my own experience. Otherwise, I know I'm going to enter more of an unconscious place, and I'm going to do more of what the crowd wants to do. And that's great sometimes, but you know, how do I know if that's what I want to do? You know, because if we're not tuning in, we're normally just going to flow the path of least resistance. We're going to go with the flow of the crowd. Sometimes that's the great move. Sometimes it's not, you know? So I would just love to close things out, but I want to give anyone an opportunity here to say any closing remarks. If you want to riff off of any points that happened earlier, or just to mention something that you feel would be very helpful to the viewers here. And also when you're done that, if you want to let people know how to learn more about you or anything that you're offering, I'm sure they'd be happy to hear.
I'll just mention that petition again, decriminalizenature.ca/petition. If you could please share it far and wide, that would be incredible. If you go to Canadian Psychedelic Association, the Facebook page, or psychedelicAssociation.net, there is some videos you can share, which give some information about this as well. We did some webinars recently with Dennis McKenna, Wade Davis. Those are available on the website as well as with Adrienne from a movie I'm featured in called Dosed. I highly recommend that movie as well, dosedmovie.com, if you're interested in seeing firsthand how these medicines can really help somebody. And yeah, psychedelicassociation.net and mapscanada.org. And then my business website is libertyroot.net if anyone wants to get in touch. Thanks, guys.
Beautiful. And we'll make sure to put more information how to get a hold of everybody, maybe like an hour after the podcast. So check in later tonight or tomorrow. I also put the petition in the comments section of this live video as well. So you can just click on that afterwards.
Yeah, so last notes for me, I suppose. Gotta get my information out there. So I have a mailing list for all of the events that I work with. I'm also planning on doing a reading group for this book here. It's called Technic and Magic. I don't know, it looks like it might be showing up backwards for you.
No, I see it good.
Okay, good.
No,
but yeah, it's all about different ways that we make sense of reality and how those relationships to reality change the reality that we see about ourselves. So that's a project that I'm going to be working on, and I'll be sending an email out about that. You can sign up to my list at dgreig.com. And I'll also be putting out an online course sometime, probably in the next few months, with people like Dr. John Rebecki at the University of Toronto. The only one who's like confirmed so far, so that's the only name I'm going to give at this point. But I have a few interesting things I'm working on. So if you want to stay in touch, follow up on my website. Anything else? I think we mostly covered everything I wanted to talk about on this subject. So I guess I'll leave it at that.
So good, so good. Ava.
Yeah, well, I want to actually mention that the draw, where how to win the 2 season passes for the Maps Canada conference is to like our Facebook page, also subscribe to our YouTube page, as well as if you can tag 3 people that you might think that be interested in our upcoming podcasts, and then we will draw a name from all the people who actually did that, and we will draw a winner at the end of episode 2.
And where can people find that information in case they didn't get to jot that all down?
Oh, I'll be posting it on. Actually, I did post the contest on the Wave page, Facebook page, and I can also drop it in the comment section below this video, and I will be putting more details shortly on the Wave page as well. So just log on to the Wave in Facebook, and that's it, and the instructions will be there. Other than that, I mean, I'm just thrilled that this petition's out there and it's going to be spoken about in the House of Commons. You know, it'd be really cool to see, one day all the MPs in Parliament going on a nice ayahuasca journey or a iboga journey together. I'll join in on that.
I did remember one thing that I could mention, if you don't mind me jumping in for 1 second.
Yeah.
I meant to bring this up to get you to elaborate, Trevor, but I think it's important to also let people know why decriminalization is a very important effort, right? So if we go with just the medicalization model, we have a lot of PhDs who could be gatekeepers for these compounds that honestly aren't that complicated to use if you have people who are well-reasoned beings that are supportive. So decriminalization will help a wider array of people have access to the healing experiences they need and bypass the systems involved in medicalization, which involve a lot of profit-based, patent-oriented types of ways of going about these things. So I think it's important to be clear and explicit that, maybe for people who are on the fence, there's a really, 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 really good reason to sign a decriminalization petition to help that pathway as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, legalization, medicalization, I think there's definitely a path forward there. I think MDMA will be a prescription soon. Psilocybin will be a prescription soon. At the same time, it's not rocket science. It's being able to hold space for somebody on a mushroom journey. It's, we've all, my generation in particular, we've all done a lot of mushrooms around a campfire with a bunch of beers, and we all survived that. So if you can put a little intent behind it and go on your own healing journey, you should be able to do that. Nobody should be going to jail for this kind of thing.
No, totally not.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to add something to that, what you just mentioned there, Trevor, that, it's making psilocybin or any other plant medicine legal. If you compare that to, for example, legalizing of marijuana, marijuana is used heavily as a recreational drug as well. This is also something that's a very serious use. It's not just like going to be used recreationally, right? So, I guess the question would be how do people get educated about it? Part of the initiative of making it legal is also the education aspect of it. It's actually a therapeutic element as well, not just like this fun drug, because it's not always fun and games with this drug.
But it's also okay to just go to a party and ask the support.
Yeah, me too. I came to this through the fun side of these substances.
I understand. Yeah.
But yeah, look, there's room for everybody.
A funny note, though, is that the illegal dispensaries by my house have done a better job educating the public than the government has so far with cannabis. So,
I know
where their motivations lie as well.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing about what we're doing, and what I really see is how this is going to be formed is exactly in these types of forms, and to educate now, to build up all the scientific studies now, to share now, because it will become a public demand. And by the time it does reach more of the mainstream, there actually will be education on this. People will know what to do with it, and then it won't, there's no denying it anymore. It's like, this is medicine. You can't say that it's not. And actually, a final note that I really wanted to mention was we're hearing all these just really awesome things about psychedelics, and it's almost like it's like too good to be true. So I would love for one of you guys just to riff on that for a moment. Is it really too good to be true?
Well, I think caution is needed for sure. Like it was mentioned, some people probably shouldn't be taking psychedelics. If you've got really acute mental disorders, you've got to enter very carefully. If you're taking something like this, expecting to have a fun time party, there's a great meme that I've got up on Facebook right now that it kind of resonates to, you might take a bunch of mushrooms at a party and expect to have a great time, but this thing that you did 10 years ago that you haven't really atoned for might come up and present itself to be healed. So I warn that with microdosing too. Like you might just think I'm just taking a little microdose of mushrooms until your microdose decides it wants to be a really big medicine session for you. So, I think that it's important to have caution. At the same time, it's important to remember that David Nutt at the Imperial College in London, he put together a graph of drugs in the world from most dangerous to least dangerous. Alcohol was the most dangerous. Heroin was number 2. Alcohol is far more dangerous and costs way more toll on society and an individual's life when abused than magic mushrooms, which is on the other end of the scale, and it's completely safe. So, even to even to try and abuse magic mushrooms, you might have a quote unquote bad trip, but you might wake up the next day feeling like $1 million because you finally sorted through that trauma you've been burying for the last 20 years. So,
well, that's why I mentioned that before. Is like to actually, what you mentioned as well, is part of it is like the setting and the intention.
yeah,
Going in there with the intention, like going to a party, if you're going to go there, oh, I'm going to have a good time with my intention. But like you said, all of a sudden it flips it on you and say,
Yeah.
oh, this is the time to actually deal with the trauma that you dealt with back, you're not dealing with back when.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point about you guys though mentioning about it, in like party experiences or just in having fun and play, because, if we are looking for healing, we're not always aware of what medicine is actually best for us. And that's part of the teacher of the psychedelics. Like potentially you maybe just haven't been moving your body around as much, potentially you just haven't been laughing enough. Like potentially you just have been taking yourself too seriously. It's like there's a lot of things that we don't actually realize is the medicine that we need. And it's a great point though, Avo, still taking it seriously may not be the absolute appropriate word, but it is to an extent, because it's like you want to treat these like a sacred relationship,
Exactly.
and you're learning to build a relationship with yourself. So it's like you don't just not even really think about it, just take the mushrooms, start drinking a bunch of alcohol, and then be like, just be on your merry way, because you don't necessarily know what's going to happen, because consciousness is going to work the way that consciousness works. And if you have some things that you're kind of like hiding in the background, or maybe some desires you're not aware of, or this or that, you're going to start to have that experience. And if you've done it in this kind of nonchalant way, you're going to be unconscious of these things coming up, and it might create negative circumstances with other people, or might really hit you by surprise, and now you're not prepared. Now you're a little bit inebriated or something, and now you can't actually be with this like deeper healing coming up, which is why next episode we're going to tune in more to how to work with this in an integrous and an ethical way, how to work with doses, intention settings. And we're going to have Peter Arcari on, who's been doing this type of research for about 15 years, and he's helped facilitate ceremonies all around the world, work with shamans, and we'll be taking a deep dive with him. So if you've been really inspired by this talk, it's going to be an opportunity to learn more. Both Daniel will help to educate you more with that, as well as Trevor Millar. Go to MAPS Canada; they're doing incredible work. And is there anything else that you guys could mention as far as resources go that haven't been mentioned yet?
There's loads of books. Go to the MAPS Canada or MAPS USA website. There's lots of books. There's lots of podcasts. There's endless amounts of information on this stuff right now. Yeah. Just do a deep dive. Go down that rabbit hole.
I can post some links in the comment section later on, so people can go to. I have a bunch of bookmarks that people can check out. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And Chris mentioned our other guest. I think we have a second guest too, don't we?
Right now, Peter Arcari is the only one fully confirmed.
Is the other one? Okay.
So I'm just going to keep it at that, but also might talk to Daniel or Trevor. Please give us feedback, because this is going to depend. I might do a whole branch of the wave that is just on psychedelic medicine, or we might just do an episode every, say, 4 episodes. We'll do one on psychedelic medicine. The second episode is going to be more on building a relationship with the medicine, but after that, we're going to go into different subjects like fasting, the mucusless diet, yoga, philosophy. We'll be going to a lot of different topics so that we can be on the cutting edge of evolving human consciousness. So I want to thank you, Daniel Greig, so much for coming, man, so much for sharing. You look just so clean and sexy too. So thank you for presenting your best aesthetic self as well. But no, man, like honestly, like how articulate you are, and to really go deeply into your experience from high school and everything you went through there, and to talk about like dissociative states, like that is I just really want to commend you and honor you for going through your process, to be open to it, and to be here today sharing, and to be in such a place where you're speaking from like enthusiasm and inspiration. I can feel the joy coming from you, and it's you know, that really touches my heart and makes me feel a little emotional, because it's like I can really see, and I know you as well, so I know the journey that you've taken to an extent, and I'm excited to learn more, because you're doing really good work.
Thank you. I appreciate this moment to be seen. I feel very affirmed.
So good. And I want to thank you, Trevor Millar. Honestly, I didn't fully know why psychedelic medicine was coming up as the first topic, because, you know, I'm more work in the world of like Kundalini yoga, self-awareness, and helping people, like holding space for people to go through their emotional process. Now, I've used psychedelics on my own. I've also co-facilitated experiences as well. If anyone is interested in some of that deeper work, please give me a shout. But to have you on was really, it is really incredible, because I know how legitimate of an organization MAPS is, that you are on, that you're like chair of the board is really incredible, that you're doing this petition, and the work you're doing with Ibogaine. Like, you're dealing with people that are, it's this very serious addiction. Like this is life or death for some of these people. So I understand what goes into doing that kind of work. I understand what kind of transformations that you would have had to have gone through in your life to be able to hold space with people and do the kind of work that you do. So I want to really thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on here, and to not only help to legitimize psychedelic use for all of us and all of those listening, but all of those that this touches, and all of the work that you do, and all the people that it continues to touch, because it's not just those who do the work, like say with you with Ibogaine, it's the families it touches, you know, it's the friends, it's the people in their community. One person transforming and healing can change an entire fucking community, you know?
Great.
So
thanks very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor.
And last but not least, Avo, brother, thank you so much. Thank you for all the work you've put in, creating some of those videos, just the riffing sessions we had on how to really make this the most effective podcast. I really want to thank you. Thank you for being a special guest host.
My pleasure. Yeah. Any way we can, you know, expand people's awareness and consciousness, help people heal. The whole world needs it.
Totally. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm still going through my process in many ways, you know. Yeah. So yeah, if y'all want to continue to tune in with the flow that the wave brings, check us out Thursday at 8 p.m. for episode 2. Like I said, Peter Arcari will definitely be on, and we're going to go more into the relationship of psychedelic medicine. We'll make sure to have this up for rewatch. So make sure to share this with your friends on the Facebook channel, as well as our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, feel free to message us through the Wave platform, and we can help connect you to either Daniel, Trevor, Avo, or really any of the information that we've talked about today. So on that note, much love. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Chris.